Good morning, Warren. Thank you for jumping on a call with me today so we can talk about the class property profits. And I know you have some exciting news. So I just want to jump right in and ask you just to walk through your experience of when we work together and what you've been up to, and whatever else you'd like to discuss so that people are aware.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. So the process essentially started with, an idea I've always had in my mind, which was, I want to figure how I can put myself and my family in a better position. So for the last probably 5, 6, 7 years, I've been, slowly but surely starting to become familiar with the idea of investing in real estate. But I never quite knew how to execute, or more so, I think I was just afraid, intimidated of the entire process. And just to kind of give a synopsis of our story, Jasmine and I have known each other since we were in middle school at Kiley Middle School in Springfield, Mass.
What?
And we've always had somewhat of a close but private friendship, because Jasmine's always been a very reserved person. And for whatever reason, I was always able to connect with her on a deeper level than probably most others could at the time. So fast forward into high school, where we started high school together as well, and we always maintained that same, polite friendship that we've always had. But fast forward a few years after that, I actually returned back from Springfield. After college, I left and I went to school in New York City. And when I came back, I would bump into Jasmine quite a bit because she didn't live too far from my parents' house. So I'd be in the neighborhood, maybe exercising, walking, or just around, and I would always bump into Jasmine. And every time I would see her, she would have a multifamily. Of course, at the time, I wasn't too familiar with the idea of owning a multifamily, maybe living in one, but not owning it. So we would have, catch up conversation, and, we would always wish each other well, but it always ended with Jasmine telling me, you need to get yourself one of these, right? And, we're both in our early 20s, and I always would remember walking away from the conversation saying to myself, what is she talking about? I thought the goal was just to buy a single family home. You move your family into the single family home and you just live your life happily ever after. But what she did was she planted a seed, and then that seed began to get watered a few years later, when I found myself in a position where, I had my own family and I really wanted to essentially take my family a step higher than where, my parents were at with me. So to make a long story short, you know, I- the seed was planted, but I started to water the seed by just picking up books, but I didn't really know how to execute. So fast forward to about a year or so ago, Jasmine and I, once again, per the usual, bumped into each other, and we caught up, and Jasmine actually told me that she would help me out with the process, which was a shock to me because, of course, I didn't know that there would be people who would be interested in essentially helping you establish, generational wealth and purchasing a property. So of course, just always being friendly with Jasmine and knowing that she always had my best interests at heart, as well as her husband Elijah, I decided to take a leap of faith, and that's where I find myself at today, where I just purchased my first investment property.
Congratulations. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the property that you bought and the experience?
Okay. So the property that I just purchased was a four family. It's in East Springfield, not too far from the Big Y, actually. It's in that neighborhood, between Carew Street and Page Boulevard. And it's a really solid property. It's built like in the 1940s. It's actually former military housing. And it was just a great opportunity that stumbled across my feet. So I decided to take a leap of faith and move forward in the process of trying to purchase it. So it was a trying time. It was the first time. So of course there was a lot of hiccups that occurred, and there were a lot of different things that, obviously, no matter how many books you read, no matter how many conversations you have, until you're in it, to experience it, it's definitely going to be something that you're going to have to basically, as they say, put your finger to the water to check the temperature.
Mhm. Wonderful, wonderful. So tell me a little bit about, so that people know your experience in terms of how we work together and what you think the most valuable things were that you got out of working together.
Okay. So basically, from start to finish, it was very supportive. So anytime I would find myself in even just had a general question as far as, hey, I offered this price. I'm not too sure if this is going to work out as far as the mortgage was concerned, and the income and any expenses that I, couldn't foresee coming. Jasmine and Elijah, or mainly Jasmine, but at times Elijah would obviously have his input as well. Jasmine, which is great because you have two, solid investors who are willing at all times to make themselves available, which I think is a plus. But what Jasmine and Elijah would do is they would sit down with me and we would legitimately go over every single potential number, from the interest rate and how that would affect the potential mortgage price, as well as, unexpected expenses such as, the water bill, because most landlords are responsible for the water bill, as well as common area, either heating, electric, and you know, they made me aware that you should put money aside for, unexpected expenses or future expenses, such as capital expenses, which would be like your roof, your water heater, your boiler, these big ticket items that a lot of us as either young homeowners or, people who have never owned homes don't anticipate. We just think you purchase your home, you live in it, you pay your gas bill, you pay your electric bill, and that's pretty much it. But unfortunately, there's these things called, roofs that go after so many years, and water heaters and furnaces that obviously if we don't maintain, they can become big headaches down the road. So what Jasmine did is help me establish basically a savings plan, which is called, just capital expenses and maintenance, that will allow me to make sure that in the event one of those situations does happen, I'll be financially prepared. Obviously, it's a big difference between being emotionally prepared and financially prepared. Emotionally prepared is, you know it's going to come, but being financially prepared gives you peace of mind. So that was great. That was something I never thought about. And trying to think what else. So that was just at least the month to month, the day to day operations as a landlord. That's something that, I was unaware of. I was unprepared for. I thought it was just, you get phone calls in the middle of the night and you respond to them. But to have a financial program put in place where you're making sure that no matter what storm may potentially come, you'll be prepared, was probably the best part of that process. Now, moving forward, as far as, purchasing the property, there's a lot of negotiations that go on between yourself and the seller, and at times it could be trying, at times it could be testing. But obviously, if you run your numbers correctly, you're going to know what you can and cannot, or excuse me, where your wiggle room is at. So if negotiations come down to, you may want something to be fixed, and the seller saying, hey, I can fix that, but I need you to give me, more money on your asking price, you should already know, because you've run your numbers to the extent that, if I go up $5,000, it's only going to change my mortgage price, $5 a month. And that's another thing that you're not going to really know until you get yourself um, in that arena per se, and just take a leap of faith. Because I think a lot of times the biggest hindrance to us in our growth is really just ourselves, and being pessimistic and always telling yourself that there's something that you can't do, and in all honesty, you won't know until you try.
Right, right, absolutely. So thanks for that. So this is your first one. How are you feeling now? Will you consider a second, a third, a fourth?
I'm considering the next four. So to be honest with you, of course, like I said earlier, my initial idea of home ownership was, you get your primary residence, you try to get the nicest house that you can afford, and you kind of just live your life in that regards. But now that I'm in this investing space and I consider myself to be an investor, and I'm completely comfortable with the process, the goal now is to at least get double the amount that I've purchased each year. So if this year I purchase one, the goal next year will be to get two. If I purchase two next year, the goal next year will be to get, the following year will be to get four. So I'm looking forward to the end game now. So
Mhm.
initially when I got in, I was very timid. I wanted to maybe just purchase a single family home and rent that out. But because of Jasmine and her expertise, and just that comfort that she gives and the reassurance, now I'm looking forward to, maybe potentially getting a, 36 unit.
Yes, the big boys, the big boys. So this is all excellent. So if somebody was on the fence and they're still undecided about taking the property profits class, what would be something you tell them to get off that fence?
Just got to execute. I mean, if you're on the fence, that means you're ready. The biggest thing that you can do at that point is literally jump over the fence, right? If you're running from somebody and you get yourself to a point where it's either you get stuck behind the fence, and whatever that thing is that you're running from is able to get a hold of you. Or if you find yourself climbing that fence, right, and that thing is staring at you, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna jump towards the thing that's scaring you, or are you gonna jump away from the problem? So my thinking is, if you're on the fence, that means you've already made the decision. The biggest thing that you could do at that point is just take a leap of faith and allow yourself to become the best version of yourself that you can be. And I think obviously if you've already been thinking about taking Jasmine's course, you should just take it. Because what's the worst that can happen? You're going to gain some information, and you're definitely going to find yourself in at least 1 or 2 units. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's about generational wealth. It's about changing lives. And it's just about, doing things that you probably never thought that you could do until you do them. So if I had any piece of advice, if you're on the fence, just push the trigger and just take a leap of faith in yourself, because you can do it.
So that's great. And I think you touched on something that I really want to make sure we expound upon. That is not only the generational wealth, which I think is one of the most important things, but we often talk about we're not just buying properties to make profit. Yeah, that's the goal, but we're really changing communities, right? So, what does it feel like being a landlord in your community, your name on the deed, looking like the tenants that you actually are serving? How does that make you feel, and why is that important?
You know what? That's a really good point. And I'm happy that you brought that up, because that's a big part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Um, Actually, the name of the company that I have now for real estate investing is called Purposeful Holdings. And our slogan is to, take back the properties to appreciate the asset, right? It's a Jay-Z line that I've always, since he said it at the Nipsey Hussle, I think it was Memorial. It was something that always resonated with me, right? So when I became a landlord, I made a decision that I wanted not to be just a typical landlord. What I wanted to do was establish a positive culture, because I think that's what's missing in communities of color, right? It's not only the systemic issues that we've been dealing with for some period of time. It's also the people who own a lot of the land, who own a lot of the property there. I think just naturally, because they don't have an invested interest, they don't look like them per se, that they could care less, and it shows. So my big thing is, like Jasmine mentioned, is not to be so concerned about how much money I bring in every single day or every single month, as opposed to how I can improve the individuals, the tenants that reside in my properties, right? So I want them to have an enjoyable living experience, and I want them to feel appreciated, because at the end of the day, we are giving them one of the most foundational and fundamental aspects of their life, which is their living condition, right? So if you treat people with respect, you'll be surprised at how things turn around very fast. One of the biggest things that I've experienced as a landlord is basically, once I establish a positive culture, right, of respect and admiration, and just wanting to actually genuinely get to know these individuals, a lot of the issues that the previous landlord told me about went away. From non-payment of rent to lack of communication to some of the tenants she claimed were very disrespectful. But of course, once I went in there, and I went in there with a different approach, and I just treated individuals like human beings, um, it was shocking, to be honest with you, how fast um, these individuals, the personalities seem to be completely different than what I was told they would be. So I think that's a major component. Is we should go in there, and anybody who's going to take Jasmine's course, or who is already enrolled in Jasmine's course, should seriously consider, which is not only just how can I profit from this, but how can you help your tenants profit from this. A thing that I try to establish with them is, um, I figured out that there was a way online that you can actually have your tenants pay their rent and actually help them improve their credit score, right? So when I proposed this to my new tenants, of course, they were all in shock. And most of them all told me, nobody's ever done this for us. Nobody's ever been concerned enough about my credit. It was always about, is the rent due? I mean, excuse me, did you make your rent payment? Or, knocking on your door, hey, you didn't pay rent. It's the second. So just doing a little small gesture like that, which took me no more than 5 minutes to Google search and find, it allowed me to, once again, establish a different rapport, which is ultimately a different culture in that property. And that's what I plan to do with any other property that I purchase moving forward.
Thank you for that. So I know that we spend a lot of time talking about culture and how we treat our tenants like people, dignified people, because that is exactly what they are. And it doesn't matter what their income is or was or will be. We should treat them with the same level of respect, no matter what the level of income they're at. So I thank you for that. And I think that's important for people to hear. That tenants are people, and they're more than a number. Yes, investing in property is needs to work out numbers wise, but when you balance the culture with the numbers, you actually make out better. You uplift the company. You not only uplift the company, you uplift the community, and the community impacts your numbers as well. So anyways, I thank you for that. I think that's really important, and I can't stress that enough. It's so important for us to own the communities that we reside in. And that helps avoid gentrification as well, when you got a stake in the game, to avoid things to flip to other sides unnecessarily. So anyways, I thank you so much. Was there anything else you wanted to share? I think that was all the questions that I had.
No, I mean, really, if like we mentioned before, if you're on the fence, I mean, I really hope that you can, just take a step back from that initial fear that pops up and realize that fear is because you're putting yourself in a position where you're getting ready to stretch. And usually when you stretch, that's where greatness happens. So, you have to embrace that anxiousness, the anxiety, and realize that it's there because you're going in the right direction. And once you go in that direction, all those things will go away. All your fears, your anxiousness, your anxiety. And at the end of the day, I think once you also take this course with Jasmine, you're going to realize that you're going to have an ally, right? So when you move forward after the class and you have your first potential offer or deal that's on the table, if you're for any reason, if you're concerned, confused, you just have a general question, you just want assurance, I'm sure Jasmine, I'm sure her husband Elijah will make themselves available to assist you and to ensure that you obviously move forward and make a purchase. So, once again, if you're anxious, if you're nervous, if you think that it's too much money, I would highly suggest that you make this investment in yourself, because ultimately, what you pay today, you'll receive 10 times over.
Absolutely. So two last things. One, did you collect all your rents this month?
Yes, I did. Correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you did it in a pandemic. What month is it?
It's September.
September 2020. So I know a lot of people are so fearful that people aren't paying. I bumped into my HVAC guy yesterday. He was doing some work for us at the church. And I asked him, I said, hey, how's your property going? Did you collect your rent? He said, got the same tenants and they've been paying every month. And again, the ripple effect, if people saw my post from the other day on Facebook, my HVAC guy only got into property because he was talking to me and Elijah, which is my husband, while he was tuning up our furnaces in our multifamilies.
Yep.
So, it's powerful. It's powerful how you can change people's lives and let them build generational wealth by just being an activator for what's already there. The last thing I'll say too, which you alluded to, is Elijah, my husband, which we've been together forever, 19 years? 20 years, who knows? It's been a long time. But anyways, the benefit of working with me is that you automatically get to work with him. You may see him and sometimes you may not see him. The same way, whenever you're working with him on the businesses that he takes the lead on, you're working with me. I'm just behind the scenes, and being a coach and consultant, he's the same thing to me. So I think that's really a great asset to have, that you're actually getting two minds instead of one, which people may not know. I haven't really shared that. But people that work closely like you know that it's a package deal. You're getting two times the investment from two investors. So I thank you so much for jumping on this call with me, or this Zoom with me. And thanks for sharing a little bit of your story. I think that this is going to be powerful for people to hear and for people to see. And this is actually a major announcement, because you haven't publicly really told anyone besides a very small core group. So congratulations on that. The world is now going to know what Warren Barnett has been up to.
Yeah, and this is part of taking that leap of faith, right? So, like I said, if you're on the fence, no different than I was on the fence potentially about making this announcement and letting others know what I was doing. It's one of those things that's part of growth, right? And like I said, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling nervous about doing something, it's probably because you're going in the right direction. And you should take a leap of faith, because once again, that means you're going to grow. That means you're going to develop into the better person that you're destined to be. So take a leap of faith. If you're on the fence about, signing up for the course, or if you're on the fence about thinking that, is this real? Is it, is this some scam? Trust me, it's not. This is a legit opportunity for you to not only gain knowledge, but to start, like we talked about, generational wealth, right? And to put yourself and your family and your loved ones in a better position than you found them. So I think that this is a great opportunity. You should just take a leap of faith.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, Property Profits begins tomorrow. It is Thursday. And I just wanted to bring you this information so you can hear from a real live person that may look and speak and talk just like you. All right. You have a great one, everybody. Thank you again, Warren.